Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where I have decided this is not the way to go. I did some off-camera testing on this and it's really awkward. I think that our best bet is going to be to construct a special transit tanker starship here in orbit. So to that end, what I want to do, this guy is currently not quite full. I want to fill him up and make sure that there's absolutely no amount of fuel being wasted here in this particular unit. So I want this to be completely fueled. We're going to grab fuel from here. There we go. And now, while we're still in low Kerbal orbit, I'm going to deorbit this guy, and this is probably going to end up being expended. I want to be clear about that, but I want to see how it ends up going with some proper re-entry burns and the like. So I'm going to leave this guy in orbit. We're going to do some orbital construction to make this into a slightly more effective unit, because I did some testing. There's some bending issues on this, and overall, Delta V is really janky, and the game has no idea what we're doing with this. So with all that in mind, we can do better, and that's exactly what we're going to do. So I'm going to take this guy over to retrograde. And we're just going to slowly turn our way over to retrograde. I also want to pull a little bit away from this starship, so I'm just throwing some extra momentum in there. That'll be okay. And I'm just going to leave this guy here for now. We will get back to it, but I want to deorbit this and see how that goes. Now, we have quite a lot of fuel here, and I want this fuel to be low in this starship, so I don't actually want the fuel to be up high. I want the center of mass to be low. So we're going to take all of this fuel, and we're going to move that here, including the oxidizer. So we're just moving all of the fuel down to be lower for landing purposes. We want to have a low center of mass, not a high center of mass. So that is absolutely fine. All of that fuel is heading down, and that's okay. So this starship is fully fueled, and we are going to be bringing up additional tanks for it. The way that I want to do that is probably via docking ports, which will require some Kerbal construction. We will need that anyway to have fuel lines and to have struts for that. So that's all okay. I want to deorbit this guy by bringing him down. What? This is going entirely via RCS? Oh, it's because these engines are all deactivated. Okay. I'm going to activate our vacuum-optimized engines. There we go. And I'm going to turn RCS off for the moment. We're going to bring our periapsis height down to about 40... I think 40 kilometers will be absolutely fine. So I'll bring this to 40. We know that we had issues with that previously, but the reason I'm doing 40 here is because we have a lower apoapsis, so we have less overall energy than we did last time, and we also have enough fuel to do a re-entry burn. So that's absolutely okay. I'm going to shut down our vacuum-optimized engines now, and I'm going to activate our non-vacuum optimized engines. I'm also going to close our Clampotron shielded docking port, but I'm not going to close anything else for now. And we're going to bring this around to about here or so. Now, we may end up coming down on the dark side. It does look like we are going to. That's a little unfortunate, but I didn't even look at that. I guess this will be absolutely fine. And we're going to orient this around. Oh, we are in Atmo right now. We need to turn RCS on and orient quickly then, because we do not want to enter Atmo in this attitude. We need to retract our solar panels. I did not intend to be in Atmo quite yet. And we need to also retract our antenna. Okay, we're probably going to have to do, well, we're definitely going to have to do a re-entry burn here. We're keeping an eye on that time to periapsis, and we are just continuing to head around to surface velocity minus is the area we want to be headed, which is basically retrograde right now, but it won't be later. And I also want to move this guy up. Okay. So let's see how this landing ends up going. Is this going to be a water landing? Quite possibly, which would be good. We would love a water landing. Okay, so we're basically in our correct re-entry orientation right now, and we can see that our speed is not too bad. It is going up right now because we are approaching the periapsis, but I do expect us to not bounce off of the atmosphere here. We should definitely not. There's a lot of air between us and the ground, and I'd like this to bring us around to the light side, hopefully. We'll see how that ends up going. We're going to go quite a ways, though. So let's physics warp a bit here as we proceed. Okay, we can see heating effects here. We're going to wait until we see any heating gauges at this point. We're still accelerating over the surface as we head towards the periapsis, which is fully expected at this point. We've got a good amount of fuel here, though, so this should be a pretty viable thing, all things considered. 1 minute 20. Okay. I'm going to pull out a physics warp at this point. I'm a little bit concerned. We're still accelerating a little bit here, but that should start going down pretty soon. We're still a minute to periapsis, so we're going to be here aerobraking for a good long time. But I'm waiting until we see any heat gauges here. There's one. Now I'm going to commence, or actually I'm going to wait a little bit. We see the sun coming up. Keeping an eye on that heating gauge. If this is a problem, I will commence a braking burn. We see our speed is nearly going down, though. It's going up very slowly. That's a really good sign. Holding attitude. Continuing to hold attitude. Speed is going down. Time to periapsis is currently 6 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We are going up at this point. Commencing braking burn. Okay. Braking burn, or rather re-entry burn, completed. We're now going down again. We may need a landing. Well, we're probably going to need 2 burns as we come in here. So we're going to need a burn to slow us down enough to use these chutes, and then a landing burn is the idea. So we're going down at this point. Our horizontal speed is holding firm, which is not necessarily great. We will likely need to continue our... Well, like I said, we're going to need a braking burn, I think, on the way down here. We may want to consider doing that braking burn now. Because our speed is not really going down, and I'd rather land in the water than over this continent. So that is definitely a bit of a concern. Our horizontal speed is actually currently going up. Commencing additional braking burn. I'm going to burn here until we have about... maybe like 30 seconds of burn left. So that is, of course, a significant speed reduction. I want to land in the water here. I'm going to keep 20 seconds of burn left. 20 seconds. Okay. So that reduced our horizontal speed tremendously. Our horizontal speed is currently going up. In fact, let's continue burning until we have about 10 seconds of burn left. This is pretty much just getting rid of our horizontal speed, which is what we want to get rid of. 12, 11, 10 seconds of burn remaining. Okay, so that looks good. We're currently on our way down here. I'm going to enable RCS to hold us at surface velocity minus. And currently, we can activate our drogues, but that's not a good idea at this moment. We're still pretty high up right now, and we're probably going to need a braking burn to be able to safely activate our drogues, is the current going theory. But I do want to splashdown as opposed to landing on the continent, so that's why I did a hefty braking burn there. So you can see here we are accelerating. We're at about 800 meters per second. We are going to start to see that go down as we approach the surface, but the question is, how far down are we going to go before that happens? We're likely going to have to do engine intervention before then. We're about 14 kilometers up right now. We can see this slowing down. Commencing additional burn now. Ooh, okay. That's not good. Okay, shoots out. Yeah, we're low on fuel. That's for sure. We're very low on fuel. But I think we might be okay here, actually. Oh, that was a bit of a butt clencher. But we got him. Okay. We were really low on fuel to make that happen. So that's noted. We needed a lot of fuel there, mostly for that braking burn, but that was mostly because I wanted to target our landing on the ocean, right? And it was a good thing, too. I feel like that was necessary. So an ocean-targeted landing is something we definitely want to angle for in the future. But we now know that those chutes will reduce this down to somewhere around 100 meters per second. So that is not a lot of fuel needed for the landing burn. That's a really, really good sign. Now, we're going to need to send up a flight up to that tanker, and that flight is going to need to bring with it a few things. One is going to need to bring crew. We're going to need to bring a couple of fuel ducts. We're going to need to bring a good number, perhaps 8 struts, something along those lines. And we're going to need to bring some fuel tanks with docking ports, as well as additional docking ports. So that is all fine. We're going to hop into the VAB, and we're going to construct ourselves a transit tanker, is the idea here. Now, these are going to be kind of interesting craft, for sure. So I'm going to have this be based, initially, on a Mark 1-3 command pod, I think. This is going to be kind of strange, the way it's constructed. No doubt about that. So we would need on top of this a large bicoupler. So how big of a bicoupler can we get? That is not a very big bicoupler. Okay, we're going to have to do this a little bit differently then, I think. So an engine plate. The engine plate is going to be like an EP50. We're going to want this to be flipped around this way, have 2 attach nodes, and this is what's going to be awkward here. So what we want to have on here, ideally, would be something like a pair of 256s. Obviously, you can see that is massively clipping together. This is also, of course, going to be very heavy to lift. But this is about the same lifting capacity required as our Starship. So that is understood. This is a really bad way to do this. Yes, indeed. This is a terrible way to do it. So that's fine. What we need to do at this point, of course, is get some RCS up on top of each of these. So I'm just going to have one of these for right now. I'm going to also put in a set of... And I want this to be... I'm just thinking about where we want to put these. So we're going to need some command and control thrusters. I'm going to have 8 of these. So we're going to do this in 4s. And I want to have these snapped. So that's going to be 2 here and 2 here. Like that. Then I'm going to put in a docking port, a Clampotron docking port, maybe even a senior. Radially attached out this way if we can. It looks like a senior doesn't want to be docking port or radially attached. We can just do a regular docking port. That's okay. We only need 1 of these. So the idea here is that this is going to be attached to the vehicle, right? Now, we do actually need a second docking port. That is intended to be Kerbal attached to that vehicle. Then we're going to need a fuel duct. So the fuel duct is, and we're probably going to maybe do these in relay. Yeah, probably. Okay, we're going to need a XL remote guidance unit up here, like that. We probably also want to put in the largest reaction wheel we have on top of this. So that would be a large reaction wheel there. We're going to need some battery power as well. So a 2.5K rechargeable battery pack, but that should go on top of this, it looks like. Okay, So something about like that. Then we're going to need a fuel duct for each of these. So that will end up being, we're also going to need a bunch of strut connectors. The strut connectors can maybe go inside of here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's good. So that is absolutely wonderful that we can do that. Then we're going to want to have 2 external fuel ducts. All we need is 2. So 4, 4, 2. And then these Clampotron docking ports would be fine. Okay, so we're going to ditch this engine plate and attach it in like this. This is not exactly where we want this to be, obviously. Okay, I'm just thinking about how this is going to play out. So these are going to need to be able to return. No doubt about that. So we're going to need some parachutes there, and we need to have 2 of these lifted. Do we want to do this in a single flight or in 2 flights? That's something we should ask at this point. Okay. I want to bring in a super heavy booster. So I'm going to save this as our Starship tanker construction. We'll save that. And let's open up our Starship. So we need to get ourselves an HLS here. So that is going to be, or not an HLS, a heavy lifter. So we're going to grab the Starship tanker. We're going to load this. Then I'm going to reroute this to have this be the root part here. And then I'm going to detach from this stack separator. Or actually, no, I'm going to detach from this engine plate. We're removing the Starship. And now I'm going to merge in, we're not going to save this for now, I'm going to merge in the Starship tanker construction. We're going to merge that. That can then get attached here, and now we can do this a little bit differently. Okay, so I'd like to attach the Kerbal fuel tank here, but we're going to need a way to get this into orbit, right? This does not get us to orbit. We can do this in two flights if we really wanted to. We can do something along the lines of this. But this, I don't believe, gets to orbit. It is less mass, but I'd like to lift it fully fueled. So, to that end, we're going to need a way to detach all of this. So the Mark 1-3 command pod is going to need to be separated. And we can have it up top here. But we're definitely going to need some form of engine here. So, some form of relatively high thrust engine. We could have this be a mainsail. We could also have this be a, like, Rhino. 340 seconds is similar to a Terrier. So we could definitely do a Rhino here, and this would be potentially a compact Rhino. We would have that have a small amount of fuel, like a 128 fuel tank. This is obviously not a great setup here. But then we would have a... I'm wondering how we would attach this. Here's what I'm thinking. We would have a TD-50 here. This would then get attached like that. Then up here, we would have like a TD-25, or yeah, about a TD-125. TD-25, where are you? TS-125, okay, TD-25, there we go. And then that would go up here, but this would need some amount of propulsion as well. So we would put like a Terrier here, that's a teeny tiny Terrier. Maybe we would even end up putting a Poodle here. And then a small amount of propellant here, very small. This will need to be something like a, I say small, but it's Rockamax size. It'll end up being like a 200X16. And then here we would have a decoupler, TD-25. So that will end up being this guy. Then we would have a heat shield. So a 2.5 meter heat shield. Then the Mark 1-3 command pod. Then that would itself have a couple of chutes on it. So it would have a pair of radial mount drogue chutes. And then as far as the main chutes go, we can have a Mark 25 parachute. Is that a drogue? I believe that is a drogue. So we would actually do this instead. And then I'm also going to toss in a regular radial mount parachute back here just to be safe. So something along the lines of that. Now, I'm not convinced that this is going to be very solid in terms of its structure. So I'm going to run struts like that. And in terms of weight, this should be less weight than a Starship, in theory. I want to make sure that this does not have crossfeed, and it doesn't. So that's good. The question is, will this propel itself into orbit? We don't need it to get too awful high, but this will be less mass than a Starship for sure. I do want to probably detach here and put in a fairing. So that would be a fairing that would be like a 5-meter fairing, right? And that would end up then attaching here. Whoa. That would end up attaching here. Just have one of them, please. Thank you. There you go. Then that fairing would end up being built about like that. Okay. Now, I do want to put in some strut work here, from here to about here. That didn't actually work. Perhaps from here to here would work better. There we go. And then also from here to here. Just trying to make that a little bit more solid. We should have some amount of power generation, so we'll get some retractable photovoltaic panels. We only need probably 2 of those. And we will put those about... these are retractable, so I'd like to keep them around. We could just put them about like that, in theory. Oh, I don't like where this is. This is only supposed to be 1 radial mount parachute here. That was blocking our exit path, and that's not ideal. So I would have these then go about... there, but that's only 1. We should probably have 2 photovoltaic panels. There we go. Something like this. This has everything that we need, although I am going to move our docking port. Maybe I won't, actually. We can keep it there. This has everything we need to get this attached up, but this is only 1. We're going to have to do 2 flights of this. So that's understood. And we're also... well, we shouldn't need to have a launch stability enhancer. Okay. Let's put this out on the pad and see how wiggly it is, but our staging is completely messed up. Oh, I saved that as a Starship tanker. Whoops. Okay. Well, that was meant to be saved as a Starship tanker construction. I accidentally overwrote that. We'll have to recreate the Starship tanker. That's okay. It's not all that different from the actual Starship. So let's load up this guy and just do that real quick while I'm thinking about it. So basically, all we end up doing is we take off this command pod. The rechargeable battery bank remains. We take off that command pod. We put in a little bit of extra fuel tank there. So the fuel tank ends up being... where are we? That ends up being one of these guys in here. I believe it's this one. Come here, you. Okay, so that goes there, and then we put this in, and then we need to transition that a little bit further out, like, not you, like you. There we go. We put that in, and then there's also a reaction wheel large that goes right here. And that's pretty much the Starship tanker in its entirety. Except there's also some RCS that gets thrown in here. So the RCS, I believe, gets thrown in about here or so. We can definitely do it here. So that's a little too small. It would be this guy, the 750. Yes, that is correct. And then I'm going to toss in 8 of these. I believe that's the number that were there previously. Okay, so that's the Starship tanker redone. Redone. Okay, so we'll save that. There we go. And now we can lift off the Starship tanker construction, which is now saved as the Starship tanker. So something like that. So this is, of course, going to be a little awkward. I want to see how this goes out on the pad. It's going to be very interesting to see how wiggly it is. And our staging is completely wrong, right? No doubt about that. Our staging is utterly broken. But this is mostly a wiggle test right now. So let's see what we've got. Now, this is not actually a Starship. I want to be clear about that. This is not intended to be a Starship in any meaningful way. What this is intended to be is something completely different. So we want to deliver this section to orbit right next to where we want to go, right? And this seemed relatively stable. So as far as our staging goes, this is obviously horribly broken. All of these are going to need to come down here. And I have no idea where this decoupler is. It's up there. Okay, let's bring that back to vehicle assembly at this point. We're going to have to redo that in vehicle assembly. So let's just make sure our staging is good to go. And that'll be great. We're going to move this guy down and this guy up. This guy can go here for now. Okay, so we've got all of these guys down here. That's our first stage. Then our next stage needs to be this decouple as well as this engine firing. So that is this stage here. After that, this decouple is the next stage. Okay. Then we've got the decouple up over here, which is much later. These 8 should be somewhere down this way. What is this engine? Okay, that's up there. Noted. That engine should be combined together with one of these decouplers. That EP50 engine plate should not be there. Let's see here. We do have a decoupler here, right? Actually, I'm not convinced that we have a... yeah, we have a decoupler here. So this decoupler and this engine should be together. Then we've got these chutes here. So these are our drogues. Those go here. Our mains go here. Our fairing is separate. This decoupler is here, and then the engine plate. Okay, I believe our staging to be correct now. Let's put that out on the pad. Okay. So with that out on the pad, I want to do a quick test flight here, and we'll see how this goes. This is mostly to see if there's wiggling. This is just going to be very early in the flight. I'm not going to do the whole flight here up to orbit because it's too early in the episode. We'll get that done next episode. I want to do some quick testing for wiggling and for Delta V to make sure that we'll have enough. Okay. This appears to be sitting at an angle, doesn't it? So we get up here, and I think it's at an angle. Let's find out. Let's see how this goes. Okay. We're going to do a quick wiggle stress test. It seems relatively okay. I don't think there's a problem there. Although we do have an extra docking port over here that I want to get rid of. That should not be there. Cool. So as far as the Delta V goes, I think our Delta V is okay here. The real question is, do we actually have any fuel flow here? I mean, we should, but I'm not seeing... I'm seeing 5 seconds of burn time here. We should have more than 5 seconds of burn time out of this fuel tank, I think. Okay, for the moment, let's just burn this up and let's see how this ends up going, right? So we're going to cut this throttle at about 12 seconds of burn time remaining. We're just looking at getting as much apoapsis as possible. I'm not going to do the recovery here. This is all test flight here. So we're just getting altitude. 13, 12. Okay. Well, that's definitely much better burn time. So we're going to bring this out over here for right now and just sit at horizontal velocity up. And this Rhino is definitely giving us some hefty thrust at this point, but is it enough? We need a lot of horizontal speed, and we need a lot of Delta V out of this. So the question is that good enough? We can always refuel this Kerbal if we need to, so we can pull fuel out of that, but I don't think that this is enough oomph here. I think we need some more. So with that in mind, we should revert this flight, and this will need some additional work next episode. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible. including ALS Gamer, Shadow Wolf, Kentogan, Ali Lee, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, Soccerman12UK, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video, and as always, I will see you all next time.